Mattys Mental Health Podcast, aiming to spread awareness on mental health by sharing the real-life stories of those who've experienced it firsthand.
Jared Burry is back. He's back in the podcast. For those, I guess no one knows, but we've done this once before. We had some technical difficulties.
Yeah.
And by technical difficulties, I mean I screwed up and didn't record. So here we are. But I wanted to do it again, man, because it's a great story. Yeah. And I just want to say thanks again for coming back on. Sure. And we can just jump right into it if you'd like.
Yep, definitely.
I'll let you describe what you
the situation.
Yeah.
So my fight or battle or journey, whatever you want to call it, with mental health started around March of last year, which is, not too long. Some people have been battling mental health their entire lives. For me, it just happened most recently. But it started about March last year. Basically, what happened from my memory is my parents went down south to Mexico for March break. They never invite me. So, it's no different from years prior, but I'm by myself, aside from my sister's partner who was finishing his degree. So he was just staying with us for the time. So it was just me and him in the house, making meals for ourselves, going to work, going to school, whatever it is either of us were doing. Nothing out of the ordinary. I get a little nervous. What?
They never invite you, eh?
Not since we were kids. No. Me and my sister have gotten the short end of the stick on the trips recently. Yeah, but that's all right. It's all good.
Yeah.
So
some alone time away from the kids.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So it's nothing out of the ordinary. I get a little nervous whenever they leave, just because you never know what could happen. But other than that, it seemed like it was going to be a normal March break alone. I was sick a week before, though. Very, very sick. Don't know what it was. Obviously, it wasn't COVID because that wasn't around yet. But very bad stomach bug, throwing up a lot. At one point, I had a fever so high that I just woke up and then stood up and passed out. Just not good sick. But as the week was progressing, I realized that I was getting extremely nauseous, vomiting, and these very pent up, agitated feelings, nervousness, just not feeling myself on edge. And I didn't really know why that was happening or, what was going on. And I never really experienced too many mental health issues prior to this, except for a little bit of travel anxiety when we went to Germany back in grade 5. So that would have been 10 plus years ago or whatever. So, it's not like I have had a long battle with it.
So what was that like when you say you had travel anxiety when you were younger?
So there's a few instances of it. The first one would have been in Germany. So we went to I was in grade 5 when we went to Germany. It was just a family trip. And halfway through the trip, I think it was a week and a half or 2 weeks, I just started missing home a lot, very sad. Just didn't really want to be there anymore, even though, Germany's a beautiful country. It's an amazing experience. Might have been too young to really appreciate it, but I was just kind of sick and feeling, homesick. And then the next instance that would have been really big would have been in grade 9, you do a Ottawa and Quebec trip when you go to Queen Charlotte as your junior high school. And I got really bad homesickness. I believe we were just getting to Quebec whenever I started throwing up, completely sick on the bus. I felt so bad for all the other students who had to deal with me. But I was sick that entire trip. It was not pleasant. And by the time I got home, as soon as I got home, I was fine. So I guess
you attributed it to homesickness. Did you know at the time?
At the time, I just thought it was homesickness. With the grade 9 trip specifically, we had a Chinese buffet for dinner before it started. So I kind of made it off as, oh, it was food poisoning. The kung pao chicken wasn't cooked properly or something.
Well,
but
could have been both, right?
could have been both. Yeah, could have definitely been both. It was kind of a sketchy restaurant.
All you can eat.
Yeah, it was all you can eat. Yeah, there were a lot of people there. It's crazy. But no, so I kind of shrugged it off, and we didn't really think much of it. And like, I'm not traveling every single day, so it's not like it would affect my day-to-day life. But this time around, it was different, because even after they got home, and even as weeks progressed, it got worse and worse. I was waking up 5 of the 7 days of the week feeling completely nauseous and usually throwing up. And it just never got better. And I was in the middle of a work term for co-op for school, and I felt terrible, because I was like, I literally can't even function right now. My brain is so, all over the place. I'm throwing up every 15, 20 minutes. This is like terrible. And thankfully, my employer was very understanding during this time. They gave me all the time I needed off, and they let me, miss some parts of my day if I had to go to the doctor or anything like that, to kind of get all this sorted out. And I went through a transition period from that co-op work term to another one. And in this time period, I was going to my doctor, and we were treating it as just a gastrointestinal issue. So, at first he thought IBS. And, if we talked about this last time, I'm sure we'll talk about it again this time, but IBS is a very blanketed term. It covers a broad array of gastrointestinal disorders, and it's basically just a doctor's way of saying, I don't know what's wrong with you, but here's some medication to help you.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, oh, your stomach is messed up.
Yeah,
that's pretty much just, you can expect that from now on.
Yeah. So yeah, no, exactly. So we treated it as that, and I got a bit of relief, but nothing like close to what I would get relief in the future.
So what did you take at that point?
At that point, it was just a probiotic and Metamucil. We were treating it solely as IBS. Nothing was treating my underlying anxiety, which we further was kind of discovered was the main problem. So I was just taking fiber and probiotic. So like nothing that would help my mental health, like at all. Now that said, doing a lot of research into it just out of my own curiosity, I did learn later that there's a huge connection between the gut and your brain. And if your gut doesn't feel good, your brain's not going to feel good, and vice versa. So it did help to a degree, but not as much as, the medications I took further on. But,
it just wasn't the root cause, right? So if the gut was the root cause, then it might be different.
Yeah. So we did that, and then we tested my blood, 5 or 6 times, seeing if it was hypercalcemia, which can cause anxiety. And my calcium is slightly high, but not enough to put me in that area. Looking at my parathyroid and my thyroid, checking the different hormones that they release and seeing if they're out of whack. I also got tested for H. pylori, which is the bacteria that causes ulcers, and I was tested positive for that. So I treated that with a rigorous diet of antibiotics and acid reducers, which was terrible. Was not pleasant at all. That was cleared up. Didn't seem to make much of a difference. So we went through a lot of things. I even ended up getting a gastroscopy done to see if there were ulcers, and there weren't. It was simply just the bacteria was present. So a lot of, testing and procedures to no avail, which obviously did not make my anxiety any better. So at that point, I saw a gastroenterologist, and he said, Jared, listen, you're a healthy guy. You're 20 years old. 21, I guess. I always forget how old I am. I'm not even that old. But he said, you're a young guy, you're healthy, you're fit. I don't think this has anything to do with your gastrointestinal system, because, you're taking these, IBS precautions. You had a gastroscopy and nothing came out of it. And, the H. pylori would have been cleared up. I think it's all mental. Because I told him some of the, like, whenever I felt nauseous, I felt kind of agitated or on edge. And he said, it's probably your mental health. And he explained to me further about kind of the connection between your stomach and your gastrointestinal system to your brain and how they work together. And he said, I'm not going to do anything for you right now. What I recommend you do is you go to your doctor and you figure that out. And I said, okay. So I went back to my family doctor and we started on some antidepressants. And this was actually the second week of my new work term. And I remember I got it on Monday. It was Celexa, which is citalopram, I believe is the generic term. And you're usually supposed to give antidepressants a couple of weeks, upwards of like 6 weeks for them to show their effect. But Celexa didn't agree with my body at all. I got 11 hours of sleep in like 4 days. So like I wasn't sleeping. Yeah, it made me feel way more on edge than I had felt before. It just didn't agree with me. So I went back to my doctor, like exhausted and trying to work at this new company at the same time. And I'm like, listen, like, I feel terrible. I need to get on something different. And he was like, yeah, all right. So he put me on Zoloft just because, I have a lot of family members and friends who are on Zoloft and have had good luck with it. So he put me on that. And he gave me a doctor's note for the rest of the week. And he said, you're not going back to work until at least Monday. And that's if you're feeling better. Again, thankfully, this employer was also very understanding of my situation. My supervisor said, yep, take the rest of the week off. Hopefully we see you Monday. If not, we'll get everything fixed up.
Can I pause you for 1 sec?
Yeah, sure.
Did you were you hesitant at all to take medication, or like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know you mean without even finishing your question, is because like I know a lot of people are hesitant about it. They think they don't need it or whatever. I don't think so, and I think it was mainly just because the feeling of the nausea and like people who don't really have IBS or gastrointestinal problems or just feel nausea all the time wouldn't really understand, but it's a terrible feeling. Like it really is. Like we said this last time we recorded, but like just imagine having a hangover every single day, like aside from like the mental haze, but like the feeling of needing to throw up like constantly, just every day of your life. It's just terrible. So
and the energy, like it drains your energy.
It drains your energy so much. Like I remember, like if I would be like throwing up at nighttime, like if it was anything past like 7 or 8 o'clock, I would just be like out for the night. Like I'd be done because it just takes up so much of your energy and like your will to be awake. Like it's just terrible. So that, like the idea of antidepressants potentially helping that alongside my friends and family experiencing mental health and getting treated with antidepressants, I think those two things kind of led me to be completely open to it. Like speaking of my family, my entire like side on my mom's like so many of the people on my mom's side of the family have anxiety or other mental health issues. So genetically speaking, it was, it would have been a shock if I didn't get affected by it. And it, it was a while, like, early 20s is whenever I got affected, but it would have been very unlikely if I didn't get affected by it. So I was completely open to the treatment of it just because if I had the ability to not feel sick every morning, I figured, yeah, I can take a pill every day if that's what keeps it away. So yeah, I was open to it, but I do understand that, people who may not be as open, they're worried it might mess with their brain, make them feel weird or make them not who they normally are. But at the
I think
same
that's a
time,
big one. And I mean, I'm
yeah,
just from the people I've talked to and, you know, just thinking about it for myself, like what would I think? I think like you'd be worried about that. Like, am I going to be like a different person?
yep,
How's it going to affect me? And that sort of thing.
yeah, and I think I did have some thoughts of that, because like there are so many different types of treatments for uh, mental health issues, anxiety in particular. Anxiety is the most common mental health illness. I think the statistic now is that like 30% of people will experience anxiety at some point in their life. Whether that's just like simple, having anxious episodes or having, full blown panic attacks or generalized anxiety. Like that number is so staggering, right? So we're getting to a point in society where it's more normal to be abnormal, to have an abnormal brain, and to have an abnormal brain chemistry. And also, the stigma of mental health, luckily, is beginning to be broken down so much so that we can freely talk about it, especially on like platforms like this. And it's great because like mental health is when you break it down to like the molecular level, it's literally just chemistry in your brain that's gone a little awry. That's it. Like there's
Hmm.
nothing really else to it. Something just kind of went a little wrong in your brain. And there's definitely different ways to cope with it. Some people just try to push through it, and good on you if you can do that, but not everybody is capable of doing that. I know for a fact I wasn't. Some people go the medicinal route, and go on antidepressants or other anxiolytic medicines to help with their anxiety or any other mental health issue that they have. And then some people go to see, therapists, counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever it may be, and get to talk to someone and try to work through their issues with them. And I was recommended by my doctor to talk to someone. But I think with my problem mainly, like I think a lot about it. I do a lot of research on, ways to try to make myself feel better, or, certain chemicals in the brain that might affect how my stomach is feeling. And I do a lot of research into it. I'm not necessarily a hypochondriac thinking I have stomach cancer, or I have ulcers, or whatever. I'm just really interested in trying to make myself feel better and interested in all the things that, could be wrong with me.
What are
Um,
some things? Have you found things that help you?
um, Exercise is a huge one. So exercise, research says that exercise does help with your stress levels, and it also curbs your appetite. So, you don't have to eat as big of portions, which was really big for me, especially whenever my nausea was still really bad. Being able to work out, just running a bit on an elliptical, or, um, like doing a little bit of weightlifting, just to kind of get your breathing up, and, you know, the adrenaline and endorphins that are released when you're working out, it does surprisingly reduce your stress quite a lot. And it also affects your appetite. It kind of nullifies that. So I would have to eat smaller portions for dinner, which was huge because I didn't want to eat, because I feared that it would make me feel sick. So that was a huge thing that helped. Music was probably the biggest thing. I just listen to music all the time, and music is known to increase your serotonin levels, which is the main chemical associated with anxiety and depression and other mental health issues. They recommend, like, if you have low serotonin, fall asleep listening to music or things like that. So music, exercise, just trying to be as, uh, you know, normal as I possibly could. Like, go do my day to day as best I could. If one day I felt really sick and couldn't do it, that was that. But just trying to kind of push myself through each day really helped, and it kind of built up my mindset around mental health because I studied mental health in some of my psych classes. I'm doing a psych minor for my degree, but it's one thing to know like the theory of it, but it's another thing to actually experience it and have to think of ways to cope with it yourself.
Right.
um, so yeah,
And
like
then
it
and then
was,
find ways that works for you, right? Because it's
yes,
different for everybody.
Yeah, so not everybody's going to want to exercise, to keep their anxious feelings away. Some people aren't hugely into music, so it's a matter of finding what works best for you. And the same thing goes for like the medicine side. One of the biggest things when it comes to starting on medical treatment, or pharmaceutical treatment, excuse me, for anxiety, depression, or other mental health issues is knowing that it's very unlikely that the first thing that you try is going to be the best thing for you. It's a chemical cocktail. You have to find the perfect blend of things that works best for you. So obviously, like I said, Celexa didn't work very well for me. Zoloft did, but I noticed over time it started to wear off. So I had to keep increasing the dose. I got to 100, which I'm still at now, but I noticed that I was still feeling a little off. Not like what I normally felt whenever I would increase a dose. So I realized it was starting to kind of wear down a bit. But the problem at that point was one of the side effects of most antidepressants, I think Zoloft in particular, is hand tremors. So just kind of like shaky hands. And I didn't really want it to get worse just because it was already noticeable to some people. And I just didn't like the feeling of it because it kind of made me more anxious. So my doctor recommended additional medicines, kind of supplementary medicines to go along with the Zoloft in order to kind of fight the anxiety. And I started with Wellbutrin, and that one was like Celexa. It made me awake all the time, no sleep, made me feel terrible. I remember at one point I was taking it and like I had like an emotional breakdown at the table, eating dinner, in front of my parents, my sister, and my grandparents, even because it was around Christmas time that this happened. And I was just thinking, like, why is this happening? Like, I don't understand, and I don't even know why I started breaking down and crying. It just kind of happened, and I was like, okay, well, Wellbutrin's not working. So after Wellbutrin, we tried Seroquel, which is an atypical antipsychotic. It's normally used to treat schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, but it can also be used adjunctly with antidepressants or specifically SSRIs, which Zoloft is, to treat just generalized anxiety, panic disorder, and things like that. So I started on Seroquel. I think this would have been before Christmas, and things really started to pick up there. Um, at that point, I wasn't feeling nauseous as much. I was still taking probiotic and Metamucil to that day, and still to this day. This morning I took probiotic and Metamucil. It gets expensive after a while, so.
Yeah,
But
no, it does.
at that point, things were starting to get good. I would wake up and, out of the week, maybe 2 days I would feel nauseous. And now, we're in June time. My anxiety is pretty well under control. I did a lot of reading, self-help books, um, continuing listening to music and exercising, and then just kind of like doing research and getting a better understanding of mental health as a whole, and how to cope with it, things to say to yourself and to others who might be experiencing it. And I think just going through it and knowing that I'm fighting this battle and I'm winning every day, it really is building up kind of this willpower that has helped me come a long way. Nowadays, like I still wake up and I feel slightly nauseous, but I know that's not going to stop me from getting through the day, getting through work, being in social situations that might scare me a little. It's really come a long way since March, and this battle can take some people years. Luckily
Right.
for me, it took me like a little over a year, but some people aren't as lucky as I am when it comes to mental health. So I'm pretty happy with the results that I've had so far, and now I'm really looking to help other people when it comes to their mental health issues. Uh, we talked about this in the recording. I can't remember how it got brought up, but I whenever I was younger, I kind of had anger issues. Um, I was I was a kid that acted out, and it wasn't like I was the class clown or anything. I just talked a lot. My teachers didn't like that, so they always got me to shush. They always made me sit by myself because I'd just be distracting other kids. and I felt kind of isolated, I guess. And throughout, grade 1 up until like the junior high years, I would just, talk and talk and talk and not care really. And I think that kind of built up to become kind of anger issues. And I felt like angry for no reason, like not even like someone would, like trip me and I would get angry. I would just feel angry like at any point and didn't know why. And I guess when my mental health started coming around now, there's a big gap of time, but my anger issues did kind of get better over time. But especially now, I just realized that there's no point in being angry. Like it's too much effort in its own. It takes a lot out of you as well. And I get to the point now where if I do get angry, like I feel really bad afterwards. I feel exhausted. Like it's just like not good for me. So now I'm changed from being an angry person to being someone who's actively trying to help others, which is, awesome. It's a good turnaround. But I've come a long way for that.
Right. Yeah. I think that can happen, like, especially, I'm sure it happens in girls and women too, but I think it happens a lot in, I can only speak to my experiences, like with boys and men.
Yeah.
When things are bottled up, oftentimes it comes out in anger.
Yep.
And also, when you're not feeling good, like I can contribute to this, like, especially when we're talking about stomach problems and stuff, like,
yeah,
if you're like, from a scale of 1 to 10, if you're feeling like a 1, like you're just, you're like not happy. You're not a happy camper.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that comes out in anger because like it's just, you can hardly live, right?
Yeah, you get frustrated with feeling sick to your stomach every single day. And like I didn't get to the point where my thoughts got too depressive. I did experience a bit of depressive episodes and thoughts, but I never got to the point where like I was thinking about, doing anything bad to me. Like what I was considering was like, can I live without a stomach? Like, will that remove these feelings of nausea? Like,
I don't even need a stomach.
Very drastic things. Turns out you don't. It just kind of messes up your, system. But, I was thinking like things like, I just want this nausea to go away. And I think like that was also, like I said, a driving force in me, being completely willing to accept treatment, because like, it's just a terrible feeling. And yeah, like you said, like when you feel nauseous, it really does affect your mood. Besides feeling exhausted, it does make you agitated and angry because you're just sick of feeling that way.
Well, I think pain, like physical pain too, is something, like when you're constantly in pain, like and especially with your stomach and that mind-gut connection,
Yeah.
like it's like a gnawing pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Combined with the energy, and then you see people, and like it's such a shitty thing to even say and to think, but you just like, everyone's just like feeling good and you're just like not at all.
No, exactly. Like you're just upset that everybody else is feeling good. Like you just want to feel good. But yeah, no, it's not a good feeling. Just imagine having a hangover every day of your life. Just, waking up, and as soon as you wake up, just being like, oh, I got to go throw up. It's not pleasant.
I think though, like, we talked about this a little bit last time, like, I have a whole story of my own about that, but I finally
Yes.
came on the other side as far as like my stomach, and I feel good now. And it's like, I have such an appreciation for feeling good now.
Yeah.
Like just the baseline feeling good, I'm like so appreciative of it. Like, because I know how bad it can be.
Yeah, no, and like I said, yeah, you said that, we talked about it last time, and I talked about how my sister's partner has a very rare kidney disorder. His kidneys aren't functioning like at all. He had to go on dialysis for months and months at a time, 3 times a week, and it was just like terrible. He finally got a kidney this March, which was amazing. But he has this willpower to just never feel bad. Like despite his problems, he always has a smile on his face. He's always cheery. today we got news that they found blood in his urine, and there was protein in his blood, which is signs that his new kidney might not be accepted from his body anymore, or that the disease might be coming back, which is terrible news. And he was just like, well, I got to go get a kidney biopsy done. Like, it is what it is. And I'm like, how, like, you just got a kidney. You're so lucky to get that. And you got that ripped away from you potentially with like this announcement that we got recently. How can you be so cheery about that? Like, how can you be okay with that? And that's really rubbed off on me. Like, how I like appreciate feeling good. Like you said, like he goes through so much like hard times. He goes through so many hard times. He's gone through so much already, and he still has a smile on his face. Like if he can do that, I'm sure I can get through my nausea. And I've come a long way. Like I said, I still feel nauseous, but I get through my days every day. I get to go out and play golf. I get to hang out with my friends and my girlfriend. Life goes on. And like the nausea isn't going to stop me from doing me essentially.
Right. Yeah, man. I think that's it comes with anything you go through, any hard times, any struggle.
Yeah.
You come out of it with a new perspective on life.
Definitely.
You mentioned a few times, things that you do, music and exercise. Do you have kind of like a list per se, like things that you have to do every day to feel good?
Yeah. So I wake up. I mean, I usually work 8 to 4 or like 8:30 to 4:30, 9 to 5, any of those times. So I wake up basically as soon as I wake up. I go downstairs. I make myself a Metamucil smoothie and take my probiotic. That's step number one. And I also take some magnesium just because it does also help a little bit of anxiety. So I take all of that. I get a shower. I get a shower every day. One, just because, the warm hot water, it's a nice feeling. And two, apparently getting a shower can help your anxiety. I don't know how true that is, but whatever. It could just be one of those myths that is placebo. It makes me feel better because I think it makes me feel better. So I do
Right.
that. I get ready for work. Right now I'm working mostly from home, but normally I would get up and go to work. I make sure I eat enough because that's another big thing is whenever you have, stomach problems, you usually feel sick whenever you eat too much, and you also feel sick whenever you eat too little. For me, it's mostly whenever I eat too little. So I need to make sure that I have something for breakfast. I have some snacks, some granola bars on hand to make sure that, my stomach isn't really empty at any time. So, peanuts is a really good thing to eat because, it's good in fat and protein. So it's going to make you feel full. Fruit is obviously extremely important, and your veggies. So like carrots, like you can have pears or like apples for your fruit. Whatever you like, as long as it's a fairly healthy snack. Make sure you have lunch, like a sandwich or whatever. Drink a lot of water. I usually drink a bottle or two a day, which most doctors recommend. So I listen to music whenever I can. Luckily, with my work, I can usually listen to music basically all the time. I usually listen to some like lo-fi music, which is just kind of ambient beats. Very relaxing, keeps me focused on my work. And also just, isn't anything that's going to raise my emotions or mood too much.
Not listen to EDM bangers or anything?
Well, that's what I mean. Like, you shouldn't be listening to like heavy metal or like you said, like dubstep if you want to like be mellow. So like lo-fi music, Low Key is a really good playlist on Spotify that I listen to all the time. So that's a really good one. I like to golf, a few times a week. It's good to get that exercise, be out in the fresh air, get some sun. And, during those times, I'm also taking my medications. And, being with friends and family, being with my girlfriend really helps my anxiety as well, because, she understands what I'm going through and she's there to support me. shout out Emma. I'm glad that you're in my life.
Shout out to
And
her.
yeah. So yeah, there's, hopefully most of these things are things that people can relate to and can experience
Yeah.
themselves, like if they're going through stomach problems for one thing, but also just anxiety. Like getting into a routine is probably the most important thing, because
Right.
it keeps your mind at bay. Like it keeps those thoughts at bay, I should say. You know, being into a regular routine, it doesn't allow much room for bad things to happen. Now that said, if bad things do happen, there's definitely ways to cope with it. In my case, since I have generalized anxiety and panic disorder. So for my panic attacks, I usually have Ativan on hand at any time to help me calm down. But also, taking some deep breaths, closing your eyes, listening to music, relaxing, even just saying out loud, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. Everything's fine. Saying things like that really helps. So, we've been through things, both you and I, that have probably, shaped the way we are, but it's the number one thing for me, at least, is getting into a routine and also making sure that you have people in your life who are willing to support you, because there's no point in having toxic people in your life, but also having friends, family, or being in a relationship where you can openly talk about your problems is really, really important. I'm very glad to have my girlfriend, my friends who, whether they understand mental health or experience their own mental health issues, my family is super supportive of it. It's really important to have those people to rely on if you need to.
No, yeah, 100%. I think support is everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. I was actually just on the last podcast, we were talking about how, oftentimes like we say to ourselves, like, we're the only one that's feeling like this. And maybe you can relate to that too.
Yeah.
And that's like the common theme of this podcast. Like it's come up almost every episode. Is like, you think like, why am I feeling like this? I'm the only one who feels like this. But
Yeah.
When you reach out to someone, first of all, you might be surprised who will help, and if that's family, friend, whatever, or even, coworker, whatever it is,
Yeah.
boss, like, you never know how understanding they'll be. And also you never know what their experiences are themselves.
Yeah.
Right. Like, just for example, like us with our stomach problems, right? Like,
yeah.
We didn't have any idea that either of us had that before we talked. So
Yeah.
like, it comes down to, and that's kind of like the reason I wanted to make this podcast was like, everybody has their story, whatever it is. It's just like, we're all keeping it to ourselves usually.
Yeah.
So everybody's human. Everybody goes through these things. So if we can share the information of how, like, this is what I do, this is what helps me. But routine seems to be, very, very helpful for all mental health, for sure.
Yeah.
And just sticking to, like, so that music helps you a lot. I'm sure, music helps anybody, but like, it's kind of like a recipe of like, what do I need to do every day to feel good?
Yeah.
And that takes time,
Yeah, no, and exactly. Like you're not going to get it after one day. And that's something that I really am very, happy with and fortunate to have is, my journey has been short. Like it's been a small journey so far. I know I'm going to be dealing with it for the rest of my life, but some people have dealt with things their entire lives. Like people who have PTSD from, fighting in wars, and they have to face their demons every single day. Like there's a few people at my work who, are getting older and they've experienced mental health issues since they were kids. So like, it's really important to just be grateful that, you're here, you're alive. That in itself is very hard to do. It's a 1 in a million chance of being alive in the first place. So, take pride in that, take pride in the fact that you're getting through your battle. That's hugely important. And yeah, like you said, it's funny because we all think that we're in it alone, that our situation is unique, and technically it is, but at the same time, we're all going through things, despite how different they may seem. They could have the same underlying issues. You could have the same underlying mental health problem as someone else. And you might be friends with people, who have mental health, and there could also be people, who are completely quiet about it. And I think that's the worst thing that you can do when it comes to your mental health is keep quiet, and also just push it down, and believe it's not there, because I tried to do that at first and things got so much worse when I did that.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea of push your way through it, or, why do you feel anxious? Just stop feeling anxious. Why do you feel depressed? Just stop being sad. That's not how it works.
Yeah, that's such a toxic mindset that you can get into, because that's when like it just keeps getting worse and worse. It's like, there's nothing wrong with my life. Why do I feel like this? I have no reason to feel like this. And then like it just keeps getting worse. I always think that, and what I've learned is it always seems to be way worse when it's just in your head.
Yeah.
Like if you leave it, if you don't say it, if you let it build up, it's never good to bottle it up.
No. Yeah. And I think I felt that a lot of the time with my anger initially is trying to keep it to myself, because there was a point when, like, between junior high and up until now, where I realized that my anger was hurting people. So I tried my best to keep it to myself. And usually what would happen is I would just explode. I would just implode on myself. I'd get in my head, I'd be very angry with myself. And if I wasn't doing that, I was taking it out on other people, which obviously isn't fair.
Yeah.
And that kind of relates directly to mental health. If you keep these emotions bottled up, whether it be your anxiety, whether it be depression, whatever it may be, you're just going to be worse off. Talking about it, seeking help, seeking treatment, it's the best thing that you can do for it, because realistically, your journey doesn't really start until you take that first step.
100%. And I think, like it comes out in a variety of ways, right? Like anger, or it can turn out to be alcoholism, or like using substances, or like, anything. You can get addicted to anything, or but also too, like, I think it's important to mention, because sometimes when you say mental health issues, people kind of get like, oh, I don't have mental health issues. And like, there's the classic anxiety, depression, whatever it is. But there's also just mental health in general. There's also like, maybe you have toxic people. Yeah. Maybe you have toxic people in your life.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have a good relationship with a family member. Like, everyone knows how much childhood development affects you. So there's so much going on, and to pretend that it's not relevant, and I just make that point because I think mental health issues is like, first of all, there's a stigma there shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And everyone's scared of getting a title of anxiety or depression or something. But it also just, mental health is everything. It's just how you're dealing with the world. Maybe you don't know what you want to do with your life, and that's gnawing at you, like so many 20-year-olds around our age do. Or are you doing the wrong thing, or or you're not passionate about what you do, but you feel stuck. And there's so much stuff that goes on, and it's it's so much more than just I think they just label it in a box like, oh, I don't have anxiety or depression, so I don't even have to think about mental health. It's like, mental health is everything.
Yeah, no, it's not something that you should be concerned about if you have it, or if you think you have it. Like your mental health and like your mental well-being, even, like that's that's something that we all have to take care of. No matter if you have a label of anxiety, a diagnosis of depression, whatever it may be, you still have to take care of how you feel in your head. And yeah, cutting the toxic people out of your life, building relationships with people who really connect with you, trying to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life, things like that can really help. And, alternatively, on the other side, it can really destroy if you don't take care of yourself. So it's one thing to actually have a mental health disorder and be diagnosed with it and cope with it. But it's another thing just to understand that like your mental well-being is still something you have to treat and take care of. Like this podcast, it's all about mental health, and whether the viewer base is people who mostly have actual disorders that have been diagnosed, or people who may think about it, or even just people who are just interested in understanding mental health. Whoever the viewer base may be, the most important thing to take away is that it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter if you have a diagnosis or not. Your mental health, in many ways, should be number one, because it affects everything. It affects your mood, it affects your digestive system, as we both know. It affects the way you interact with other people. It affects the way you work. It changes everything about your life. And if you don't take care of it, that's when you're going to kind of get to a point where it's likely going to transfer from just bad mental well-being to an actual disorder. And it can happen just like that. And it can happen very spontaneously, abruptly, and it can hit you hard. And with me, it really hit me hard. It hit me at a bad time when I was transitioning from one workplace to another, and had no idea how to cope with it. So, if there's one takeaway from this podcast for anybody who's listening, it's just take care of yourself. Take care of your mental well-being, and don't be afraid to reach out for help if you ever need it.
100%, man.
Yeah.
That seems like a good place to end it.
Yeah.
Again, I just want to thank you again, and I also want to apologize for supporting, but this was great, man.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this.
Of course.
All right, man. Great talking to you again.
Yeah.
Have a great day. Thanks again.
You too.